On June 22nd, 2020, costume designer turned film director Joel Schumacher passed away from his year-long battle with cancer. Schumacher is best known for many films such as The Lost Boys, The Phantom of the Opera, 2 Batman films, and many, many more. We here at the Sons of Cinema would like to extend our condolences to the Schumacher estate and fans. You and I kind of grew up with Schumacher.
Yeah.
Not even, again, being somebody that's enjoyed horror films, The Lost Boys was a huge vampire film for me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, how could we at least not forget Batman Forever and Batman and Robin?
Yes.
It's hard not to.
Yeah. It's funny, as cheesy and as bad as those movies were, it's basically what, that's his legacy. And say what you will, it's pretty funny, 20 years later, we're still talking about it.
And he's done a lot more other than just those films, such as, was it Falling Down, St. Elmo's Fire? And I find it interesting how he was a costume designer first, and he was like, hey, let me try my hat at this directing gig.
Yeah, I didn't even, when we were talking about this earlier, I didn't even know he was a costume designer. I just assumed that he was, he did the traditional route, go to school, direct this, and then just go straight into directing. Not, he's a costume designer and then worked his way. I mean, funnily enough, being a costume designer, I'm fairly confident that input on that bat suit.
More definitely. But his costume designing has also put input in a lot of his films. When Warner Brothers wanted to go for a lighter direction compared to Burton's dark tone for both Batman and Batman Returns, they went to Schumacher.
Yeah.
All right. And at that point, that moved forward to bring in a new Batman, Val Kilmer, which we all knew Bob Kane, creator of Batman, that was his favorite choice of Batman. And to be quite honest, it wasn't bad.
Wasn't good either.
I kind of enjoyed it. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you there. Chris O'Donnell could have been a little better, but you know what? It is what it is.
But that was back when he was still young. This is like Chris O'Donnell was still acting fairly early in his career. Mm-hmm. But you know what's funny about Joel Schumacher? Like one of his favorite movies, because you talked about they wanted a lighter-hearted direction, and then like right after he did Batman, he did those Batman movies. He did one of my favorite movies with one of my favorite actors.
Phantom of the Opera. Oh, wait, no, sorry.
That was before.
8mm.
8mm featuring the acting. It's scratching at the scraping at the door. Nicolas Cage. And when I was young and I saw this, I didn't know that it was the same guy. Like,
exactly.
Seeing Batman.
I'll be honest, there's certain
and
films,
then seeing 8mm.
Yeah. The Lost Boys, growing up, I knew movies I like. I didn't even pay attention to directors.
Exactly. You're just this is a good movie.
I love Nightmare Before Christmas since when I was a kid. I never went like, oh my God, I love Tim Burton. It wasn't until I became much older. I was like, okay, I started connecting the dots. Okay, this is Tim Burton. He also did these Durton. This is Tim Burton. He also did all these other films that I've grown up to love and enjoy. Beetlejuice. Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Mars Attacks.
Yeah, exactly. When you start, listing the movie, you would and a lot of these movies, you would never suspect that they were the same person doing this. And Joel Schumacher, that's to me, that's the sign of not just, that's the guy who gets it.
Yes.
And he doesn't have to do the same thing over and over and
Precisely.
over. Maybe to me, that shows a director who wants to push the boundaries.
Yes.
And that's what he did throughout his whole career.
Yes, he definitely he pushed the boundaries. He kicked down doors. Certain movies he didn't do that were good, such as Batman and Robin, and another movie that a lot of people do not talk about, The Number 23.
Oh, 23. Yeah. See, but again, that's somebody who when you push,
he took a chance, as did Jim Carrey.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because what was it? I think it was last year. I was watching one of those videos of things you didn't know about The Number 23 and all of that, and then started going down the rabbit hole of the fan theories and everything like that. Don't do that, folks. Mm-hmm. Going down rabbit hole. Reddit is a terrible place.
All right, it's funny. I was actually just looking at something right now, and I was actually reminded of 2 films that he did that, again, I had no idea he did these. And these were actually films that I enjoyed.
What?
One of them starring Anthony Hopkins and Chris Rock called Bad Company.
He did Bad Company?
He did Bad Company.
I remember when I watched that like years ago.
And listen, and this I grew up with Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lamb and stuff like that, and these serious roles he's portrayed. So when you have him right across Chris Rock saying,
Okay. Get in the car. Bitch.
Pardon me. I think that's what a lot of people remember from that movie. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, oh, Chris Rock. It was like Anthony Hopkins, and it's like, did he just curse?
And another one that stands to this day. You know, whenever you talk movies like Locke, how you and I both love that movie.
Yes.
I forgot the phrase of what they call those films, but essentially it takes place in one area.
Yeah, we're going to have to look that up.
You can argue that Schumacher potentially brought this in.
What?
An amazing movie starring an amazing actor, Phone Booth.
I didn't even know that was Joel Schumacher either.
That was Joel Schumacher.
Wow. And that must have been the downfall
Thank
of...
you, Mr. Schumacher.
Look, listen. That was a terrible movie done with a terrible actor, and I don't blame Joel for that.
Your accent is funny. You're mispronouncing amazing and great. It's okay. You'll get a grasp on the English language.
Unlike that actor, right? Yeah.
As will I. There's actually one thing I wanted to talk particularly when it came to Joel Schumacher.
Yes.
See, you and I were kids when we saw Batman Forever and Batman Returns. When I was a child, I loved Batman Returns. It wasn't until I began older and I started, getting
this
sense.
movie is garbage.
Exactly. And not only that, it's funny enough, I sat down and rewatched the first episode of Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Oh, jeez. Why would you do that?
I shouldn't have done that because it was the glass shatter. Because you look at your past like it's stained glass. It's nothing but beautiful.
That's the nostalgia effect.
Exactly, the nostalgia effect.
We've heard of the
rose-colored glasses.
We've heard the Mandela effect, the nostalgia effect.
So then I decided, hey, why not? It's on Netflix. Watch the first episode, go down memory lane. And I began to watch, and I'm like, oh my God.
Ooh.
And it was getting back to a certain point, I'm like, oh God. God help me.
Oh, man.
And the funny part is, you go to my room, I have Power Ranger memorabilia in there, too.
And look at you now. You're like, should I start donating this to charity?
Never.
Wait.
When we got older, we started realizing how bad it was.
Yes.
I tend to look at it a little bit as into the sense that what are you comparing it to call it bad? All right. If we're comparing it to the other Batman films, yeah, it's bad. If we're comparing it to an Adam West performance, it's actually not bad. Think about it. If you watch that movie, you imagine the bam, woo, wow. It kind of adds up, doesn't it? All right, but that's actually not the point I wanted to get across.
Go ahead. What's the?
I once watched the behind the scenes of Batman and Robin, and hear the cast really talk down about that movie. Now, George Clooney, I don't know if he still does, but at one point on his desk in his office, he had a framed photo of himself in the Batsuit. All right, as a reminder of what happens when you say yes to every role that comes your way.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I did not know that.
I thought it was quite interesting when I heard it. Now, Schumacher came out in this behind the scene. He actually came out with an apology stating that he had a vision of him film. And if he did, if he ruined the film in any way for the fans that love this character, he sincerely apologized. And that's when you go and look at this movie like, oh God, they are surely in trouble if we're going down this route where the director has to release an apology. Now, granted, now being in the new millennium, we're in the teens,
millennial,
right? Millennials. That's almost the norm. It was Josh Trank, the guy who directed Fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
The day before the movie came out, he hit Twitter.
tweet and was like, "Hey guys, this movie's gonna be garbage. Brace yourselves." Like,
so when you hear these things, that the studio, because it was believed that the reason we wound up with George Clooney over Val Kilmer as Batman is because the studio rushed this sequel. Val Kilmer was in the movie, in the mix of making a movie called, I believe it was called The Saint or something like that.
Yes.
And because of which he was not available. He actually did want to return for the role of Batman, but nonetheless, that caused us having George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
Schumacher had came out and stated that the studio rushed this film because of merchandise.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I remember that being back then that was a major issue. They were all about the toy sales. That's why they redesigned the Batsuit just to sell more merch. And I understand, you know, back then, you know, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and at the same time, yes, you want to capitalize on the kids and get, you know, and they make more money from that. But at the same time, at what point are you concerned about box office success? You know, like the whole deal with Sony and Marvel for Spider-Man. You know, people thought that Marvel was, was the good guy, and it's really like a bit of a gray area because they make most of their money. They make over $1 billion a year in merchandising Spider-Man toys. Yeah. So, you know, when you hear something about that, so to me, it's like that goes back decades. This isn't a recent phenomenon. The fact that this went all the way back, and you see these companies more worried about merchandising rather than, you know, having an artistic vision. And I understand they're a company and they're publicly traded. They've got stockholders to answer to. But at the same time, you can get better goodwill, especially with the people, you know, that are going to go see these movies. And, you know, Batman back then had, you know, even now has a serious fan base. You know, you're talking about these people that are going to see this movie 2, 3, 4 times. You know what I'm saying? You put out a good product, we will come.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You know, how many people do I know that saw The Dark Knight multiple times in theater? I think I saw it like 3 or 4 times in theater. We have
a friend of ours that saw it like 13 times.
Yeah, like it's, you know, you give a good product.
Again, this is before the time of things like A-list.
Exactly. This is, oh, I got $20 burning a hole in my pocket. Let me go see this again.
Indeed.
You know?
Indeed. So it's not, you know, now that with everything we hear from, you know, studio meddling.
Yes.
Such things that happen with Fox, or great example, Warner Brothers with Justice League.
Yes.
Is it really that much of a stretch now to believe that this is indeed what happened?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, you look back at because you know what? At some point, if you hear about it once, maybe. But when you start having a pattern, you start hearing the same story over and over and over again.
There's a saying that goes, if one person calls you a jerk, they're probably jealous. 10 people call you a jerk, they're probably onto something.
You know, exactly. Something about you that you look in the mirror and change.
Exactly.
You know, everywhere you work and you know, everyone is how do I put this? A butthole. Maybe it's not the work. You go to 10 jobs.
You know what's also interesting too, because I also read this up. You used to watch House of Cards, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
That was actually Schumacher's last directing. He directed 2 episodes for that show.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Couldn't tell you which 2, but 2 episodes of House of Cards brought to you by Joel Schumacher.
Well, and they were in chapter 5 and chapter 6. Oh, okay. Season 5 and season 6.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I attempted to watch the show. I watched the first episode. I couldn't really get past it. I'm not really big on politics or anything political.
Well, so yes.
All right, and then at one point, because after a conversation with you, I began to consider giving it a chance. But this is around a time where
Yeah, the allegations.
Yeah, the allegations and the controversy and all that other stuff. And they decided, so we're going to take this show where it's narrated by the main character.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to kill off the main character and just have the show narrated by his wife.
Yes. And
granted, I understand why they're doing it, because it would be awful if the fact that an entire crew goes out of work because of one person.
Mm-hmm. So that's why they did that. Yes, and I understand that. That was the smart play from many different levels. One, it put a woman in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they didn't want the entire, they had already started filming.
Yes.
So what do? Now you say, well, we're done here. Everybody go home. Just delete everything on the hard drive. You're good to go.
Yes.
So to salvage what they could, they rewrote the script on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it was a day-by-day thing. So, and him being in the midst of that, I know that because I think season 6 was the last one.
Yeah.
So if he directed an episode then, in season 5 and season 6, I'm sure it must have been stressful for him. Mm-hmm. And so he was a man in his 70s. I can't imagine being in my 70s and every day pulling out no hair that I have left.
He passed away at 80.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Mm. So,
Mr. Schumacher, may you find the rest in the afterlife they didn't find in this current life. Yeah, anything else you want to add to that? Buffering.
At least, yeah. No, I was gonna say at least he passed away not from the Tom Hanks disease.
Tom Hanks disease.
That would have been awful. And again, my condolences to the family.
Yeah, I'm actually quite happy he didn't pass away from the Toretto drink virus. But with that being said, on that somber note, I have been DJ. He has been Rex.
We are the Sons of Cinema.
Till
Peace.
Yeah, we could have choreographed that better. All right, that's a wrap.